genuinely believe that sometimes you might have to lie to yourself in order to build wealth. You have to be a little bit delusional in order to see a reality beyond your current reality. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 lies that I told myself in order to build wealth and in order to get to my next level. And I am not ashamed that I did. When I think about it, looking at where you are and then looking at where you want to be, there are a few steps that it takes to get you there. And where I was when I first started, I had a lot of doubt about my ability to build wealth because I had never seen anybody do it before. I had a lot of fear that I would never be able to have the things that I really wanted, that I would never truly deserve the desires of my heart. And I had never really seen what it was like to transform from one space into another. And so I wasn't necessarily able to get from point A to point Z in one step, but for me, going from point A to point B required me to tell myself a couple of lies so that I could progress in the process. Now, of course, I'm being a little dramatic calling it a lie, but I definitely reframed some things. Hello, beautiful people. It is me, Tasha K with Goddess Day, and I'm excited to talk to you guys today about how I reframed the story that I was telling myself in order to put myself in a position to move towards the wealth and abundance I wanted. If you are watching this video, I would really, really appreciate it if you would subscribe, if you would share it with a friend, if you would consider being a part of this community and bringing other people into it if you feel like this is your vibe. And I want you to stay until the very end. I don't always say that, but in this video, I'm going to say that because I want you thinking, what are some reframes that you could make in your own life that would make your path to wealth a little bit easier? I don't think we talk about how to make that path easier. And a huge portion of that, it's not just your mindset, but it's how do you reframe things to make it more palatable to where you are right now so that you can get to where you want to be. Let's jump into these bullet points. The first lie that I told myself was that I didn't really care about the outer appearance. All I cared about was what was on the inside. Now, don't get me wrong, I care way more about what is on the inside. But the reason that I didn't care about what was on the outside is because I didn't have money to have access to anything. So I wasn't buying clothes. I was barely buying food. So when you think about it that way, right, I had to put myself in a position where I wasn't coveting anything. I had to put myself in a position where my desires weren't taking me outside of the capacity of my bank account, right? And a lot of people are doing that, and that's why they're stuck, because their desires are taking them outside of what they're actually able to do. And when you have desires that are doing that, you're going to think about it as a lack mindset. You're going to think about it as a poverty mindset. If you are trying to not blow your budget, like if you're trying not to be led by your impulses, that can feel uncomfortable. But when you tell yourself, I don't really want it, I don't really need it, it's not that important, I could be happy without it. In reality, all those things are true for me. I definitely was downplaying how important everything else was to me. But what it allowed me to do was stay focused on the goal. It allowed me to not get distracted by what I couldn't do or what I couldn't have. And when I got myself into a position where I was better off, well, then I could reframe again and say, you know what? Maybe those things are important to me, but they never took me off my square. They never moved me away from my goal. And at the end of the day, it wasn't important to me that I was just like, okay, I do like these things. What was important to me was that I was telling myself a story that would allow me to focus on my goal. Number 2, one of the lies I told myself is that I would love to live in a tiny house. I would watch all these tiny house shows and I would be like, oh, that's so cute. And in all the tiny house shows, I think they're lying to themselves too, because one thing they always say is they do like this, and like, oh, this is so spacious. And it's them, their husband, and a dog. And it's like 200 square feet. And it's like, there's no way. There's no way you actually believe that this is spacious. You might like it, but is it spacious? No. So I told myself that I would really love living in a tiny house, but what I really would love was my own space. What I really loved was the idea of ownership. And that was what I saw as possible at that time. But when I moved outside of that space and I wasn't there anymore, I realized, oh no, you didn't want a tiny house. You were just poor. You were just broke. You just didn't have any money. But it allowed me to look at what is possible from here. What could I have now? What could I work towards now? What feels attainable for me now? And then I could work on that realistically. And from that new space, I have new eyes. I have new desires. So I could step into each space authentically instead of trying to get from point A to point Z, right? So, imagine that you're trying to cross a river, right? And there are rocks along the river that make it easy to cross. But if you were to take all the rocks out of the pathway, how are you going to make that big leap from one side to the other? It doesn't work like that. And for me, I put myself in positions to continuously move closer and closer to my goal just by taking one step at a time. And each step required a different level of delusion. The final thing that I told myself, and this is kind of connected to point number one, which is, only the outside doesn't matter, only the inside matters, was that I don't need fancy things. I don't have to go to fancy places. I don't want to drive fancy cars. I don't want to have, I told myself that those things didn't matter to me. And I don't regret it for a second. But what I realize is that what matters and what you have access to are two completely different things. Now, what I want to leave you with is, even though I'm acknowledging the level of delusion that it took me to get to where I am now and the new levels of delusion that I'm going to enter into to get to the new heights that I want to go to, I do want to say that what I think is really at the center of my beliefs is that I'm going to be happy regardless. I'm going to be happy now with what I have. I'm going to make what I have right now enough. And I'm going to make that work. And I'm not going to allow it to stop me from getting to that next level. And when I get to that next level and when I get to that new height, I'll be able to see newly from there. So I hope that this video gives you some new perspective on how to reframe the stories and the narratives that you tell yourself for your own benefit to help you get to that next financial level. And if you made it this far, please comment below. I want to know what you think. I want to know, what are some lies that you tell yourself or that you probably need to start telling yourself to be able to really lock in? What if you could just lock in for 30 days? For 60 days, what story would you have to do? What story would you have to tell yourself in order to make that work? Thank you guys so much for being with me in this video. You are not helpless. You are not hopeless. And you are not powerless. In fact, you are powerful beyond measure, and you have everything that you need right now in this moment with what you currently have to get to wherever it is that you want to go. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Gotta stay.